Hello and welcome. So this is a really exciting show. I was just talking behind the scenes that we've not actually had Matheus on the show before. So this is Matheus Tech, one of the people responsible for Decred's Lightning Network, probably the main force driving it forward, and some excellent work been done there. But today we're looking at a new proposal, very much in its early stages, called Non-Fungible Data Chains. Before we get into all this stuff, how are you doing, fellas? How you doing, Matheus?
Hi, nice to be here. I'm doing fine. Thank you for inviting me for this presentation.
It's an absolute pleasure, and I'm just sorry that we haven't had you on previously. Actually, I feel absolutely gutted. Actually, now thinking about that, but we're going to talk loads today, and we're going to have you on and drill your brain a little bit to find out what's going on. But how are you doing, Exitus?
I'm doing good. Excited to talk about the non-fungible data chains and see what can come from it.
So we should probably start just by kind of giving some background knowledge. So this proposal came up on Matheus's website and Bison Relay just a week or so ago. And as many of you know, in the blockchain space in general, there's been lots of discussion and experimentation, for that matter, on how to extend blockchain functionality from side chains to layer 2s to roll-ups to drive chains and a whole bunch of other stuff, and obviously the Lightning Network. But this proposal kind of is going to take it through so we can have a little bit more. We've already got microtransactions, which are absolutely amazing through the Lightning Network. Now, one of the goals of these layer 2 kind of solutions or sidechain solutions, and the idea is that we get this idea of fast transactions, reduce cost per transaction, reduce blockchain congestion, and to enable more functionality, which I think most of us agree that we're at a point now where Decred's blockchain works absolutely fantastic, and we have as of I think it was May 2024. We have a scenario where the layer 1 is now feature complete, and we can start looking forward to actually building some more exciting stuff. So the idea with non-fungible data chains is that we might be able to have things like, and I say might because we obviously need to delve into this, but we might be able to have things like NFTs, ordinals, anchoring to popular projects like stablecoins and meme coins, building new internal altcoins, account systems, and smart contracts and covenants. And I mean, in that scope alone, there's absolutely loads to kind of unpick. I suppose the first thing I'd like to ask Matheus is, what was the catalyst for starting this proposal?
Okay, so the catalyst was actually Victor, who is not here today, but who developed this proposal with me. And we went back and forth with it a little bit between the two of us. And he's basically been, I'm going to say nagging, but in a good sense, in a good way. So he's been nagging me for a few months now to try and figure out a way of having some of the things that you said. So having some sort of NFT / sidechain / commitments, develop some sort of solution for that in Decred. And so we went back and forth with this idea for a few weeks last year. And we ended up with this proposal for the non-fungible data chains.
Ah, fantastic. I should also say that Victor, or VCTT, is building currently our poker system and our Pong system on Bison Relay, and I'm really excited to get it going. And hopefully, we might get the release candidate for Pong this week. So hopefully, we'll be playing Pong at the end of the week and testing that out. So that's really exciting. Victor couldn't be with us today. He wasn't too confident about his English. He didn't feel comfortable, but he has kind of left me some nice comments that I can feed into the discussion. So I'll aim to do that as well. So I mean, let's start from a high level overview. What functionality realistically can we expect from this proposal, and what shouldn't we expect? So let's kind of limit our expectations a little bit and just say what might we expect, what might not be possible.
Okay, cool. So on a very high level, the idea for this initial proposal is to have a way to add transferable, some sort of transferable data that is not coins, that are not atoms in Decred's blockchain. So this is a small scope. So this has a limited scope in the sense that it focuses mostly on the on-chain or consensus changes needed to have the minimum or the smallest impact transferable non-fungible data on Decred. So this is what this proposal aims to do, to figure out a way, the best performing way that we could add transferable ownership of non-fungible data on Decred's chain. So everything that you said, so the possible applications for this would come later as things built on top of this. So this isn't directly a proposal for an NFT system or for a sidechain system. So this is one of the tools that would be required at the consensus level, at the blockchain level, in order to build some of these applications.
Yeah, I mean, fantastic. And it is important to kind of, especially myself, I kind of get a bit carried away with this sort of stuff. But some of the things that have stopped us from building certain projects in the past is we look for, a lot of them have been undesirable for things like Decred security or the governance system, or in general, they just add too much bloat to the blockchain, or they make it completely impossible to actually do blockchain pruning. It gets overly complex. One of the things I liked about this specific proposal is it's taken all of those things into account, so you can have all this data, but you actually have the ability to prune it off. So you have a mint transaction where a chain can be minted, but then you also have an update transaction, an update transaction. And as the more transactions come in, there's going to be the possibility to actually prune some of that data off of the chain, which I thought was absolutely great. And it certainly fits with the principles that I was looking for. Now, about a year or so ago, probably about 2 years ago, Dave Collins mentioned RGB to me, so I delved into this. And then about last year, ordinals came about. And you have two completely different scenarios here. So RGB was this idea what you could have these sidechains, layer 2s or layer 3s, which limited the amount of bloat on chain. And then you had ordinals, which did the absolute opposite, where it basically put everything on chain. Now, my next question is what makes NFT chains different or an improvement to either of these solutions? So I guess this solution is more like RGB. So if you want to take it from that perspective or both, that's absolutely fine.
So this would combine some of the features from both of those solutions, from both RGB and ordinals. Trying to so this would do like so for RGB, you need to commit, or you need to commit some data on chain in order to bind or start your side chain, right? And the way, at least as far as I'm aware, so there may be some changes there because I don't really follow that super closely. But as far as I know, the way to do that, the way you need to do that, because Bitcoin can't have really consensus upgrades or hard forks the way that we do in Decred, they have to plug in some tricks in order to be able to commit arbitrary data on the blockchain, right? So in order to commit a hash or to commit, arbitrary data like inscriptions does, you have to do a few tricks. And what I try to do is that just pick that feature, trying to commit some arbitrary data on chain and make it explicit, and try to use our ability, our Decred's ability to do consensus upgrades, to do on-chain upgrades, to make it not tricky, but actually an explicit mechanism, to have an explicit mechanism for those commitments. So that would be how it's somewhat compared to RGB. So that's just the first thing that you need for RGB, which is the commitment on chain, and then RGB builds upon that to do its other things that it does to build its other features. And for ordinals, this compares to ordinals in the following way. So ordinals does its thing by establishing rules for numbering or tracking each Satoshi, right? Or atom in our case, but in Bitcoins, it's each Satoshi. So it establishes some rules, and then it has to follow the entire lifetime of the chain for each Satoshi that is tracking. And so there's obviously a lot of work that it needs to do in order to track this information. And then it uses that ordinal number as saying, okay, so there's some data that is attached to this specific Satoshi number, this ordinal Satoshi. And that's where the name ordinal comes from, because it's the nth mined Satoshi has this property. And so I was trying to figure out, okay, so how would we do this, or how could we do this, assuming that we can actually inscribe an ordinal something on Decred, because we can't change the rules, we can't do on-chain upgrades. How would we do an ordinal something in Decred? And so I came up with an explicit ordinal number so that you don't have to actually track the entire history of every atom in order to establish, and you don't have to establish all of these rules. So if you have an input and you have two inputs, where is the Satoshi that is coming from here, where it's going there, how does the mining fee come into this, and so on. So instead of having to establish all of these rules and then having to track them, I'm just being really explicit here and saying, oh, okay, so the nth volt output that has a specific tag is going to be the nth chain in our case, and then you explicitly specify that on the update transactions, such that there's no ambiguity, there's no discussion, there's no the tracking of that information is much more explicit than in ordinals. But then ordinals also uses that concept of ordinal Satoshi to build its own features that are not explicit on my proposal. And so the NFD chain proposal would be sort of like the first layer of RGB mixed with the first layer of ordinals, or the first action that is required to build RGB, plus the first feature that is required to build ordinals. So it'd be like the layer one of RGB plus ordinals.
That's amazing. I still have to kind of sink my head into that, but it's absolutely great. Before I ask my next question, or let Exitus interject, if you guys in the audience, of which we have 127 people watching currently, if you have any questions for Matheus, feel free to post it. We'll get it answered. There's kind of a lot to digest here. Exitus, before I keep going, is there anything that you'd like to mention or say or ask?
No, this is great. Letting Matheus talk about the proposal. I have some questions for later, but I'd definitely like to hear more of the details.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it leads straight into my next question, which is I really like the design of this, or I find the design really, really interesting. And I thought it was interesting that you intend to utilize the staking aspect of the protocol. I wonder if you can give us just a high-level overview of how that would work, how you're going to kind of utilize that, and what maybe some of the benefits are.
Right. So there's a lot of context here as to why I've picked explicitly to do this through stake transactions. And one of the main contexts is that as my experience on Lightning has really drilled into me, we can't just pick solutions that exist in other chains, especially in Bitcoin, and try to just apply them, just pick from that chain and apply directly in Decred without trying to use our own features, because that usually doesn't really lead to an optimal solution. And so, for example, or that's the context, and then why specifically pick voting transactions. We already have a history of using vote transactions for several different things in Decred. So it validates the chain, so it's used to validate every block. It is used to approve transaction spends, T-spends, for disbursing funds from the treasury. And it's used also to signal the willingness to perform on-chain updates or consensus rule updates in chain. So we have all these different things that votes are already used for, because it signals that the let's say the will of the stakeholders of Decred. So if you have Decred and if you're staking it, and if you're voting, if you're generating vote transactions, that's how you're letting the entire ecosystem knows that you are in agreement with how the project in general or how the blockchain is evolving, right? And so I just thought that that was a nice additional way of incentivizing voting and participation in the stake process. So just add another incentive to stake in Decred, which is, if you stake, when you vote, you get a chance to mint a new chain. There are different knobs that we can turn in when we actually start to build the system, which is that, for example, we don't necessarily need to limit minting to 1 per vote. We can increase that to any number. So, for example, when we're voting for consensus rules updates, while I think everyone that we've done, except one, we've voted for one agenda at a time. We've mostly voted for one consensus upgrade agenda at a time, but we can vote for many at the same time. We can vote, we have usually only voted for one T-spend transaction at a time, but we can vote for n transactions at a time, up to, I think, 7 transactions, T-spend transactions at a time. And so we can mint 1, or we can increase that number to, let's say, 5 or 10 or n. If the update transactions are really small and really performant, as we expect them to, then we can mint a large number of new chains at every vote, so that we don't limit the number of chains. And the impact on chain is going to be really small. And so that's really the feature of trying to use stake transactions, is to incentivize staking, give a chance for the stakeholders at the time to have some say in which chains are being created, and to naturally add limits to the number of transactions, to the number of mints.
Yeah, to use
sounds awesome.
To use Decred's voting system, and you almost forget that the voting system is used for all these different things. So obviously to distribute funds from Treasury, to propose for upgrades, to validate blocks and things like that, and it's all sat inside of there. And to say, you know what, now you can actually vote to mint a new chain, and you can also vote to upgrade that and keep track of that. That makes so much sense.
And another thing, so something that was also mentioned, you don't necessarily, that I mentioned in the text, and I think some people commented on it, is that you don't necessarily need to keep the rights for the mint, or rather, once you mint the chain, you don't actually have to use it yourself. You can just send it to someone else to use it, and that would provide a secondary market for minting things. So you don't necessarily need Decred, or you don't necessarily need tickets to use the mints. But if you have a ticket and you vote, you can generate a mint for yourself or for someone else. You can sell that, for example, you can sell that right for someone else to use that chain. But you get a nice guarantee that if you have a ticket, you are very likely to get the chain that you want. If you don't have a ticket, you might need to maybe purchase that chain on a secondary market.
So presumably, if, say for instance, this consensus upgrade gets approved, and one of my tickets votes, but I want to mint a chain, but I don't want to mint it right there and then. So presumably I can just hold on to that until I'm either ready to use it and make my own NFT collection or something, or I say to somebody, hey, look, I've got this, and you can buy it off me for $1 or something like that. That's
correctly,
amazing.
yeah.
And I saw that the revenue, you were looking at that as a particular revenue stream for either solo miners or VSP operators. So as somebody that is getting their own tickets, but they're doing it through VSPs, then I basically would delegate that ownership, or that, delegate that to the VSP. So even if my ticket voted, I'd still have to buy that rights from the VSP. Is that true?
So that's going to depend on the VSP's policies, and that would also provide some sort of incentive system for each VSP to have different policies and attract different users. So maybe there's some VSP that will always mint it to you. So, every time you vote, we also mint the chain to some script or some address that you control. Maybe some VSPs will say, we charge a smaller fee to vote, but we get to keep the minting rights for every vote we cast. And so there's some space there for each VSP to establish its own policy.
I really like the idea, and I'm just thinking off the top of my hat now, but I really like the idea of having one new chain per ticket and limiting it to that, and you have this kind of like limited supply thing. And another thing I was just considering is this would, if that was the case where VSPs were basically able to sell you that right, it might also activate more solo stakers, which is an absolute, would be brilliant for the chain, I think. Getting more public nodes. There was one other
that might tip someone from voting using a VSP to solo voting, because I really want to mint chains, and so instead of starting to delegate, or instead of continuing to delegate my voting rights, I will now start to solo vote just to get that minting rights.
I mean, on a basic kind of sum for this, so if we did limit it to one per vote, you're basically talking about 1,000 new chains every day. I don't know if you guys have got any experience in this stuff, but is that something? Is that too big a number, or is that roughly what you'd expect for people to be doing? I don't know. I mean, what do you think?
It might be that on Solana right now, just because so many people are using it.
Yeah, because I can imagine, like ordinals, for instance, you want to print a picture, then you would that would be your chain, wouldn't it? So in that respect, that would be your collection or whatever. So I could see it if you had a monkey collection and you wanted to set up the rules for that. So that seems right to me. It seems like a good number, enough incentive to get people, because obviously if you have too many, you can't build up a marketplace for selling these things. Whereas if you limit it, you get a pretty decent market. Yeah, I really like that. I've lost complete track of my my questions now.
Just a quick comment on that. Just as I said, there's a knob that we could turn to increase the number. So we could not limit to one mint per vote. We could just say n mints per vote. We could also lower it. So we could say instead of every vote having a mint, right, let's say every vote on even blocks, for example, or every 10 blocks there's a block that has minting rights or something like that. So there are knobs that we can turn to increase or have some entirely dynamic system where this is more complicated, obviously, so we'd need to work it out, the details, but we could have some system that looks over the last, let's say, 100 blocks, and if there were n mints, it increases a little bit, and if there were fewer mints, it decreases a little bit, so that there isn't a huge spike of new mints or so, just like we do with the ticket price. Instead of going increasing or decreasing the price very rapidly, you could do it over a few block windows.
Sorry, Exitus, you look like you was going to say something.
So I was typing a comment to someone who said, "Why isn't Decred on Coinbase?" And I was going to tell you that you should use Bison Wallet. You can buy USDC on Coinbase, send it to Bison Wallet, and then buy Decred with atomic swaps. My question for Matheus is: in your proposal, in your pre-proposal, you said you will go forward with this idea if it garners enough interest from the community, and you get buy-in from existing development teams, which I guess is other Decred developers. So has that happened? Have other Decred developers kind of said yes? Have they said no? Have they given a green light? What's going on there?
Yeah, so we've talked a little bit over Bison Relay. So I posted this on Bison Relay on my feed, and I've had at least, so they've replied there with some comments, some supportive comments, some technical things that we discussed there. I've had some private conversations with a few other developers as well. And so it's been a good response so far.
Yeah, I think from my perspective,
certainly a better. Okay, I'm going to be a snark comment here, but it's certainly a better response than we've ever had from Coinbase.
I think from my perspective, this is a no-brainer for me. But the only way you're really going to find out if it gets community support is to put it up on Politeia, isn't it? So, but I see no reason, unless there's a deal blocker somewhere, which from the comments I've seen there isn't. Dave C seemed very positive about taking the technical aspects forward, and most of the community have been well on board.
I think this is something people have wanted to see for a really long time in Decred, the ability to mint chains. And would this include the ability to do stable coins or have like a USDC on Decred or something like that?
So this, just like RGP, can be used for that. So as I mentioned, this proposal specifically in its scope, it's limited to doing the on-chain commitment of both the start of a chain or a side chain, for example, and the anchoring of update transactions for a possible side chain. So just as RGB and some other proposals in Bitcoin, I think Taproot Assets also does this, where it does an initial on-chain transaction to mint its sidechain, and then every other, every n blocks on the sidechain, it does an anchor transaction on-chain in order to cement the state. And so this could probably be used for that. I'm not going to say definitely, because I can't say definitely without working out all the details, but this probably can be used for something like that. So yes, it could be used on a chain. And there's a different idea that is much less developed in my mind, which is to, instead of having just a commitment to arbitrary data, is having like an amount field associated to each mint or to each chain, more precisely. And so this amount could be used for a proxy for the total amount on the side chain. So you could do something like pay into a group mint, something like that, which increases this amount and increases some UTXO amount that is locked on this side chain. And then every update transaction, you increase or decrease this amount number, this amount quantity associated with this chain. We'd have to work out some details of how you could increase or decrease, if there are different scripts or different rights that you have to fulfill, or different scripts that you have to fulfill to update, to increase or decrease. But there is this, I have this other extension to NFT chains that could be a good use for side chains, yeah. A good match for side chains.
Nice. And so do you guys have some sort of timeline for when this proposal would be published? And after that, if you can give a rough estimation, how long you think this would take to build?
Okay, so right now I don't have any estimation, and especially because it depends, as I've laid out in the text, there are different approaches that we could use to how we're going to, in particular, represent the chain data in the blockchain. So we could, for example, just use regular transactions. We could use stake transactions. We could build a completely separate field in the block representation to store the chain, the update transactions or the chain data. And so depending on which approach, it's going to take longer or less time. So I can't really give a specific timetable, but we can probably write a proposal in the next few months, probably weeks or months, and then start to get a better picture of what exactly we're going to write or implement to have this done, or to have this deployed.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think these things always tend to take quite a long time, and we're dealing with a whole new kind of dynamic here. So, a long enough time, but it's pretty exciting. I like that, and that was Diego's question, wasn't it? But are there any other questions in the comments, Exitus?
And just another comment regarding timeline, and to backtrack also to what we said about scope. Even if we did this very fast, which would still take months, there is still the question of actually building the applications on top of this. So personally, I would prefer if we had some sort of application being developed, maybe in parallel, or at least having some sort of prototype built on top of the prototype for the NFT chain proposal, because then we could actually say, oh, okay, so these consensus changes will actually allow us to build this sort of application. So kind of have like two things going on in parallel. Maybe that's a feature for something to add to DEX. Maybe that's a feature to add to Bison Wallet, maybe, or to Bison Relay. So I'm not sure. We'd have to work out how exactly to demo it, as well as writing the consensus changes.
Great. Yeah, Kozel has some questions. He says, Matheus, as the main driving force behind porting most recent developments in Lightning Network over into Decred, why do you think we see so much negativity about Lightning Network on Bitcoin?
So I think that Lightning Network is not the thing that most people were hoping it would be. So I think that the greatest hope when Lightning Network was proposed and initially developed was that everybody would be using it all the time for basically everything. It would be replacing day-to-day use of Bitcoin for basically everything. And I think that what we've seen over the years is that that hasn't really come true. So there is usage in Lightning Network. There are use cases that are compelling for Lightning Network. Even smartphone mobile wallets usually have a Lightning Network wallet associated to them. But I think that Lightning hasn't really seen as much use as it was hoped it would see.
Okay, and he has one more question. He says the general sentiment seems to be that at least in Bitcoin Lightning Network, it's failed as a scaling solution. How is this different for Decred besides the applications we already use like Bison Relay?
Yeah, I'm not sure that it failed as a scaling solution because it does scale at some dimensions and for some uses. And for those uses, it's very good. So for example, on Decred, when you're using Bison Relay and you're chatting or sending stuff through Bison Relay, I mean, it's working. Lightning is working there. It's reasonably scalable, I think. We haven't seen the limits of its scale in Decred yet, but I think it can scale very well, much better than on-chain payments, for example. So I think it does scale in some dimensions. It's just that it's, at least my feeling is that it's a much complicated and finicky, to use the technical word, solution to real-time payments in Bitcoin. I think it's too finicky for like going to the supermarket and using it to pay for stuff. Like and when you get to the teller and you want to pay up for your purchases, for your groceries, and your node goes offline, or it can't find a payment route, or your counterparty, which you have an open channel with, is offline. There are just so many things that can go wrong on a Lightning channel and on Lightning payments in general, that I think it ends up being too finicky for its originally intended purpose. But I think that, like, on a desktop and doing stuff on Bison Relay, or even if it's sending transactions or transferring Bitcoin back and forth, if you have a stable connection, if you have plenty of channels, if you have time to work out the kinks, then I think it does scale. But I don't think it's going to be the end user scaling solution that we hoped it would be.
Yeah, thanks for that. That was a really honest take. I like that, and there have been so many criticisms on Lightning Network. I personally, when I'm using it for Bison Relay, I absolutely love it. I love the fact that it's costing me 1 atom to send a message or to send a tip. This week, I don't know if you guys have seen my video, but I actually used a Bison Relay store, and the experience was absolutely great. And one thing that I particularly like the Bison Relay have done, where they've kind of they're using BR hubs to make sure that you've always got a connection to the person you want to go. Yes, you still have to work out your inbound liquidity and make sure there's enough there, but it does streamline the whole effect. But yeah, that's it's great to hear that from you, Matheus. That's nice. One thing that Victor was saying, he said about asking or putting this out there, is that one interesting point with the new NFT chains is the enabling of new assets for things like minerals that could be used for mining in games, and these assets could then be used on the Lightning Network in Bison Relay, which I thought was really cool. I probably told the audience this loads of times, but when I started off in crypto, I was playing a game called Crypto Wars, and they had an in point where you could deposit the money, or somebody could deposit the money, and then an out point where if you won the game, you could literally collect the money. And I really like that. And along the way, you could collect swords, and you could collect armor and upgrade your characters and things like that. And I really like the approach that Victor's taken this with his Pong and with his poker, and the idea of having more immersive games would be great. And I certainly see the Lightning Network as one avenue for that. I mean, having played Ethereum games and having to spend quite a bit in transactions, when that scales right back to one atom, I think is pretty decent. What are your thoughts, either Exitus or Matheus, on game assets and how this could drive forward?
I've never played blockchain games. I stick to Steam. So yeah.
Yeah, mostly same here. But I think there is some. I think that the really decentralized, like blockchain native game, I'm not super sure that it exists. It may exist. I don't really track blockchain games, but I think that to be a native blockchain game, a game that is really embedded in blockchain, you have to have some sort of decentralized solution to allow its users to mint stuff and to participate in the game with their resources, their features, their whatever, so that you can really have some sort of decentralized gaming solution. I'm just, I'm daydreaming here. I don't really know what would be the solution. It's just something that I sometimes think about.
Yeah, I mean, I like the immersiveness, and I want to see a more interactive content like that. And even if it is just having an in point and an out point, so you kind of much like the Pong game, I suspect, where you basically say, right, I'm putting up $1, and then whoever wins the game gets out $2 or whatever, and that's quite nice. So the amount of transactions that happen is just 2, rather than some games that I played on Ethereum. There was a Pokemon type game where literally every movement cost you a transaction. It got quite expensive, but it's a tough one. But certainly this idea of game assets has been thrown around for quite a while, and having these things that actually belong to you, and you can walk them into various games or whatever. I like the idea. I'm not really sure how it could kind of go forward, but certainly I'm really interested in what Victor's doing. I really like the fact that this NFT chain is kind of is going to push that forward into possibilities, if nothing else, and also like the fact that it's not going to overly bloat the chain in doing so. And it's one of my biggest concerns for a lot of these solutions is how much weight they put on chain. So you end up having these things, these interactive experiences, and the chain gets so bloated that it becomes unusable, as we've seen with Ethereum in the early days. Every time there was a new token, it kind of got congested. But the idea that you mint one chain and then all the interactions go to a different layer is really good, and obviously the database then gets stored back on chain, and as the chain progresses, old data can then be pruned off the network, which I thought was absolutely great, and it certainly fits with a lot of my ideals.
Just to comment a little bit, another thing that I really think that is an interesting feature for our proposal is that not only can you do pruning of data, You also don't actually have to keep Decred in order to keep your evolving rights or or to keep the ownership of each NFD chain. So basically, the moving around the chain, which is the one of the issues with ordinals, is that the ordinal is attached to a specific Satoshi, and so that's going to be the one that you have to move around. In our NFD chain proposal, the voting rights or the rights for evolving the chain are separate from any fees that you have to pay or any UTXOs that you use to actually update the chain. And so you can just keep your chain rights, let's call it, in a separate wallet, for example. And then whenever you want to update the chain, you can just ask someone, maybe via DEX, maybe via Bison wallet. You can just say, oh, I need to update this chain. Can anyone spare me a new TXO? And then you pay in USDC or whatever through DEX, and you update your chain.
Yes, I forgot to mention that apart from the updating and minting, well, actually, even the minting, unless you have to buy it, of course. But yeah, there's no Decred involved, which I thought that was quite interesting. Yeah, that's a really nice approach. Oh God, I've lost my train of thought again. I keep doing that. Exitus, anything from you?
No, I'm just super excited to see it all laid out in a proposal and see what comes of it. I'm well aware that this will probably take, I don't know, maybe years to implement it. Is that correct? Probably a few years to get it all going. If it also requires consensus changes as well.
Yeah, so if it does require consensus changes. So at least we have to go through the on-chain voting process, which always takes at least a few months. I think that 4 months is the minimum time because you need to publish the changes on a version, and then that version has to go out to miners and POW miners and stakers, and then they have to start voting on it, and then the change gets locked in, and then the change gets actually activated. So there's a whole, and that takes a few months at least. But obviously there's the whole proposal cycle before that and actual development before that. And then it's going to, as I mentioned, it's going to depend a lot on how we actually approach implementation. If we are going to try and fit into existing structures like RGB does, for example, or if we're really going for the minimum amount of long-term blockchain impact, then you want to do that as separate block structures, because then you can just, you only need very few bytes in order to record that this chain is getting updated, and here's the signature to update this chain, and here's the script hash for the next update. And so if we do this with special data structures that are not in transactions, then that obviously takes much less long-term blockchain space, but it's harder to implement.
You should also note that part of the proposal also looked at SPV support as well. So actually updating the header, the DCRP5, I think it was, to actually include this part of the filter so that SPV could actually validate NFT chains, which I thought was really good. And also it means that from day one, it will be supported across the ecosystem. Well, that's quite good.
So that is also something that it would be necessary in order to support light clients. So we update the header commitments to add a new leaf that says, oh, these specific chains were updated in this block, and so if you're interested in these specific chains, fetch this block and look through the transactions. And if you're not interested, then you don't need this block. Just keep you don't have to go through all this data. And that is especially important for mobile clients, because you don't want them processing every block that is coming in. So they just go through the header. Oh, there isn't any updates on the chains that I'm interested in, so I don't have to do anything.
So my question is, how do you see the UI and the user experience playing out for this? Is it going to be a simple system like Solana, where anyone can kind of come in and create their own chain or own token within like 15 minutes? How do you think that's going to play out? Is it going to be complex, or is it something that anyone can kind of come and do?
Yeah, so obviously that will have to have a few iterations in order to get a really simple user interface, or maybe a really simple user experience. But yeah, we can probably get to something that you can do. So I think that maybe the best UI for this would be either DEX, or implementing this as something embedded in the DEX software, or on Bison Wallet, where you just go in on a secondary market that has all these mints ready to go, and you just say, oh, I want a mint. What's the going rate for new mints right now? Oh, it's X. And then you pay that using, and that's why I'm mentioning DEX. It's because you can just do an atomic swap right then and there, and just pay using whatever coin you prefer. And then you just do a swap that is already paying for the minting, and then you get the update rights for that chain that already exists in the software. And then you can just keep updating. And then, as I mentioned, because you don't really have to hold Decred in order to send updates, you only have to use to specify a UTXO to pay for the mining fees when you're actually doing the update, emitting the update. Then if this is integrated on DEX and on Bison Wallet, you can just say, oh, what's the going rate for sending an update on chains right now? And so it's a secondary market for that as well. And then, oh, I have a new UTXO here available. Do you want to do an atomic swap with it and already pay immediately on the same transaction, pay for updating this chain? And then you can chain all of these operations very efficiently into a single thing. And that's why I think, at least right now in my mind, at least my initial idea is that this would get built on top of either DEX or Bison Wallet, maybe.
It makes sense to utilize the stuff there. If we're talking about an ecosystem-based thing, where we want everyone to use everything that's already existing, like we're saying about actually building it using the voting transactions, actually utilizing Bison Wallet and Bison Relay makes complete sense, because you've already got the basis there. And I was thinking about, if you own an NFT and you want to update the owner, you could also do that, say in Bison Wallet as a trade. You can actually, or even Bison Relay, if you've got a specific NFT or whatever, and in Bison Relay there's a marketplace where you can actually sell the NFT or whatever.
Yes, if an NFT system gets built on top of this, then you're already there on Bison Wallet or on DEX to build a secondary market for your own NFT or sidechain or alternative coin or whatever.
That makes, a lot of sense. I know you were saying before, when you're actually building the initial implementation, it would make more sense to build it alongside some kind of GUI. And actual fact, it does make sense to have maybe a test Bison Wallet or Bison Relay, and that being the GUI, and actually cutting back on some of that development time as well, because the basis for it is already complete, which should be a massive benefit. For me personally, that's how I would like to see anything like this evolve, where it uses what's already available. So much work has gone into both of those products. Anything now that gets built would be lovely just to filter straight into them. and increase the usage. You know, building a third app, you know, might you know, well, it wouldn't necessarily take away from it, but certainly it makes more sense to kind of put it all together. I think, just off the top of my head. But no, that's lovely. That's great.
Exactly.
Speaking of
I agree completely. Sorry.
I don't know if you had anything to add, but I was going to ask you, speaking of Bison Wallet, I'd like to know your general opinion of it and kind of what features or things you would like to see added.
Yeah, I haven't really been much involved there. I'm not sure I have a strong opinion of what should get built next. But I mean, it works. It does its thing, you know. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure where to go next. I mean, this could be the NFD proposal could be additional stuff to get into it, maybe. But that's a medium term thing.
I think, I mean, from my perspective, just to add my 2 cents, definitely the NFT marketplaces and marketplaces in general, shops, things like that. That's where I'd like to see Bison Relay heading up. There's a lot of discussion at the minute about content creator rewards. And actual fact, Bison Relay specifically has all of these things built in. Now, if you could bring over the artist community, marketplaces that are actually where they hold on to all of their rights, they hold on to the amount of the fees are a minimum. Looking at sites like OpenSea, where the fees are absolutely crazy, there's a real place where you could have a peer-to-peer exchange, peer-to-peer marketplace where they hold on to all that, and all they have to do is literally run the node to keep everything up to date. So yeah, just my 2 cents there. And I can see this fitting in absolutely perfectly. I think that's it'd be amazing.
Yeah, certainly there's something there.
I was just going to add what's being worked on the DEX right now is the mesh network, which is important, and also they're going to do Coinbase's base as a layer 2. From what I understand, isn't difficult to add once you have the infrastructure in place. And really, the goal there is to try and draw interest from Coinbase and say, hey, we have an atomic swap DEX using your protocol. Because now that Trump's president, it seems like all the regulations are going away for being listed. So hopefully we can draw interest. I mean, I don't know if people from Base will actually use the DEX, but it's just one of those things. Especially now that Thorchain seems to be having issues with they're insolvent and something's going on there. Maybe people will look for new DEXs to use and Bison Wallet's ready for that.
Yeah, so I hope all the best for them, but I've written the Rosetta implementation for Coinbase back in the day, just as after it was released. I've interacted a little bit with Coinbase people back when I was working on it. I'm not even sure if they're still working there or not. But I don't want to be too negative, but I really hope them. I have a lot of. I want to send them a lot of hope because they're going to need it. Like I want to send good feelings for them because they're going to need it.
Yeah,
I think they're doing okay.
They came out today saying they're finding it difficult to filter through the 1 million chains that are being, the 1 million meme coins that are being made every day or something. It's like, yeah. If that's your biggest problem, I think there's more to it. Guys, we are coming up to the hour point, and I don't want to keep Matheus any longer than we need to. But if we have questions, if there's anything we haven't covered, ask away in the chat. We've deliberately not gone too technical, but if there is more technical stuff that you would like to know, by all means ask away. And Matheus will, I'm sure, give us a deep roundup on this. But is there anything else that you think that needs to be added before we sign off? Is there anything else that we've missed?
I think that we've covered pretty much all of it. So yeah, so just to really keep it out there that this is just an initial idea. So I think I posted it on the Shower Thought channel initially because it's just that my level of shower thought, I can't claim something is a shower thought before I write it down, which is the same thing for was the same thing for Opio and stuff. So this is really an initial idea, but hopefully we can get some updates in the very near future for it, or at least work out in a little bit more detail, in enough detail that I'm comfortable sending a Politea proposal in the next few weeks or months.
I saw it as a shower thought, and I got straight on it. And the minute I tweeted to Twitter, it's like, "Have you seen this?" And everyone's like, "What the hell is that? That's amazing!" And it's like, "Yes, it is." Yeah, I might have got a little bit excited about it when I saw it. So I do apologize, but everyone went nuts after that tweet. And it was great to see. It was like, no, we've got to do something about this. We can't let these ideas go awry, you know. But no, it was absolutely great. It's a fantastic read. A bit technical on some levels. It's a couple of times through, and I kind of got most of it. But just I love the idea. I love the way it is. Gazelle says, if this was Matheus' shower thought, then we need to rename the channel.
I was actually one of the early people in that channel, and I think but yeah, I think it's perfectly named. At least for my own taste, or like how much I am. We're usually critical of our own work first, more than anyone else, and so that's like, yeah, this is something that I am comfortable calling a shower thought.
No, I'm excited to get anything like this going, and I was excited about RGB, to be fair, and I've been quite excited about Taproot assets and things like that, because I just think this is a natural evolution to what we're trying to achieve. Having these things is definitely popular, but then it's about doing it the right way, making sure that, yeah, we can have these fun things, but we don't bloat the chain, we don't do anything to kind of compromise security or compromise the governance. And that's why I just love the fact that we're having these discussions, and we're at a point now where I think we've almost got something that is suitable for Decred to kind of fit with all of those core beliefs, you know. So yeah, no, it was great to see. Guys, last minute or so, if you have a question, ask away, get it in the chat, and we'll put it to Matheus. Exitus, any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, just super happy to see this happen. I think people have been asking about this for years and years. You know, when colored coins, when stable coins or any NFTs, and to see it kind of finally be visualized and it'll go to proposal is great to see, and it definitely a step in the right direction. And as far as myself this year, going to concentrate on hopefully getting exchange listings. We're going to be applying to crypto.com soon. They revamped their listing process. You need to have an LLC in America, which Decred actually does with Company Zero. So hopefully we can get the ball rolling on that. Crypto.com just got a USD listing. So before it was only crypto. Now you can do direct USD even with Apple Pay and Google Pay. So I think that's the big thing we need is these centralized exchanges with USD pairs in America for Americans. I do have a new proposal for Vanguard, and that includes being listed on nokyc.io, which is a centralized exchange with zero KYC. And I think that would be a temporary solution for Americans who want to buy Decred. You can go sign up there. It works on mobile. You know, anyone can use it. It's very easy to use, and it's very straightforward. You pay $3,500 in listing fee, and you get listed. So yeah, that should really be our big focus for this year, alongside all the great developments from Bison Wallet, DCRD, Bison Relay, and now this new proposal. It has to be about getting listings and you know, kind of getting out there a little bit more.
Yeah, you're doing great work with the Vanguard guys, and I'm really looking forward to that proposal, going through and seeing what you guys can do. Matheus, it's been an absolute pleasure meeting you. And we're going to make sure we get you back on and keep pushing this forward as we've got questions. This also goes out to Victor, VCTT. Fantastic work on harassing Matheus and working through this, and keep up your great work as well. I'm a massive supporter of yours, and I love what you're doing. And if I can be of any help testing this stuff, I'm well up for it. But let's keep these initiatives going, and I think it's really important stuff. I'm going to leave the final word to Matheus. Matheus, sign us off. What's your final thoughts?
Well, thank you for having me here. Thank you for the invitation. And yeah, let's go, man. Let's stake and let's do what we can in Decred.
Thanks.
I mean, as stakeholders, let's just get on with it.
Just get on.
Gotta love those ticket dips. Yeah. Gotta love the ticket prices dipping, buying up the tickets.
Yeah.
Over 10.5 million staked. Oh yeah. Guys, absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much.